All right. Hello, testing. Okay, we are live. So today, I decided to call this series Cooking with Jackson because you're cooking with me. So today we're going to be making some brownies. Pretty simple concept. Okay, so first, I need to preheat the oven. 325. Okay. Oop, there we go. Oh, I have to pee. I'm sorry. Please note that I cannot read the comments, just so you know. I think I should probably get to the bathroom soon, shouldn't I? And you left, of course. So, brownies. Okay, so I'm just gonna grab a pan real quick. Where are the... There they are. You know what? I'm switching out the bowl for this one. It's a lot better. Nice. Okay, we got the pan. Okay, I need to move this a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we gotta lightly grease it. Now, if I remember right, I think I had some spray up in here. There it is. I am short. Don't mind that, that's just a chair sliding across the floor. Okay, so we gotta grease this baby. Yeah, there we go. Now, set this aside. Okay, first we gotta mix water, oil, and an egg. First we need the 4th cup of water. If I can find the measuring cup. Where in the world is the measuring cup? Might as well. But here's the 1/3 cup. Where's the 1/4 cup? Never mind, I found it. Now I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna take this whole thing. So first thing, 1/4 cup of water. Okay, careful. Ah! No! Okay, Well, I said steadily and careful at the same time. Okay, we got it. You saw me fail, right? Now I just need to clean up. I think I should turn the lights on. Okay, I'm just cleaning this all up. Okay. Okay, time for vegetable oil. You say oil, as in Japanese, sort of. Don't worry, I'm fine standing up on this chair. Yeah! Got it. Come on. There we go. Okay, now I just gotta undo this. And 1/3 cup. Don't mind my dog whining in the background. I'm sorry, Kenji. You can't be out right now while I'm making chocolate stuff. Yeah, I have a dog. Okay, let's put this back. And 1 egg. My current biggest obsession is My Hero Academia and Edgeworld. Well, those are 2 biggest obsessions. All right. Now it says we just gotta mix this together. Okay, let's just start mixing. This is gonna be kind of boring. Okay, I think this is good enough. Now we just gotta add the brownie mix. I forgot what it was called. And we mix this too. Yay, mixing. Oh, would you look at that? Chocolate chip. Right in the mouth. You know, I have some really big dreams of becoming a VTuber one day. We gotta well mix this. Mix this well, I mean. I just thought of something. It's so funny. Something my friend Kai did one time. Like, okay. Kazuka turned the oven light on. Okay, so I'm gonna pour this brownie batter into the mold. I think I should move this over. Hello. Where I hear something running on the floor. Okay. I think I didn't mix it enough. But oh well. Kind of too late now, isn't it? Oop. Sorry. Had to do that. Because it was like spilling out. Alright. I think this is ready to go in the oven. So let me get my thing. Okay, this is dry. Because last time I got water on it. Alright, let's do this. Okay. We bake this for glass. Alexa, set a timer for 45 minutes. 45 minutes, starting now. Okay. So, I am just going to clean this bowl out with my tongue. Which is gross, I know. But brownie batter tastes amazing. I wish I had a mic so I could do some ASMR. I have 7% remaining on my Chromebook. That's alright. I'll just plug it up eventually. So, I'm going to put this here, and I'll be right back. Okay, I got it, you guys. Got my charger, which I apparently left Okay, plug it up. Wrong side. There we go. And I'm just gonna wait. The batter's delicious. Hey, look, the bowl and spoon match. And I'm gonna put this in here. And I'm gonna maybe wash the dishes. This is turning into a live stream of everything. I have a lot of dishes on the other side of the sink. And let me just throw my trash away. I know this stream is really boring, but whatever. It's really boring. If any of you are recording this, please send a recording to me. I want to edit it. Yeah, I'm still eating the brownie batter. What do you want? You know what? I'm just going to clean out the bowl with my fingers. And yes, I've washed my hands since I touched the dog. I swear, this is gonna shut off once it gets to the 27-minute mark. Looking good. Let me just grab something. Cooling rack somewhere. There it is. Got it. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. This is getting really stupid, I know. Oh wow, it splashed everywhere. I'm just washing dishes over here. Okay, let's clean off the spoon. Remember, I can't see the chat, so if you're hating on me in there, I can't see it. Alright. I've always told to clean everything else that's not mine in the sink. For some weird reason. Oh, it smells terrible. I'm just gonna take a break from washing all these. Oh yeah, it's definitely coming from there. Don't worry, I'm fine. I just hate doing dishes. Now I'm just gonna go vibe with my phone and switch. Don't worry, I'll be back. Hey, Apollo. Okay. I'm just gonna grab the chair. Well, better put this up. You know what? No, I'm not gonna put it up. Yep, I see it. I'm live. It's about to shut off, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to watch, Nile Red. If you don't know him, check him out. He's awesome. He's awesome at, chemistry and, pretty much anything to do with science. You know what? I'm taking this chair, or whatever, back. And I'm going to flip my Chromebook around so you can see me. Yup, those paintings back there were from when I was 4 or something.
This is my dad, Jonathan Warnock. He was drafted and served in the Army. Kelly Leffler wants to convince you that I don't respect members of the military like my own father. It may be her most insulting move yet.
A while ago, I made a chemical called TCPO, which is the main ingredient in a lot of glow sticks. However, when I went to go try it out, it really didn't last very long and it completely died within a few minutes. This happened because I didn't have the solvent that most commercial glow sticks use. I instead used ethyl acetate, which is much easier to get a hold of, but unfortunately, it just doesn't work very well. With a bit of research, though, I found a TCPO replacement that seemed to be much better. Not only is it supposed to work well in ethyl acetate, but it's also a greener synthesis because it replaces one of the more toxic starting materials with an environmentally friendly one. To make the original TCPO, I used the chemical called 2,4,6-trichlorophenol, which isn't very easy to get, possibly carcinogenic, and generally mean to the environment. This prep, though, uses wintergreen instead.
It's gonna be a while. Don't worry.
Known as methyl salicylate, and it's a naturally occurring minty compound. It's commonly used as a flavoring agent for things like candy and gum, but it can be toxic in larger doses. A couple months ago, I made an edible chem video where I synthesized it from aspirin tablets and tasted it. For this video, I repeated the procedure on a larger scale and made a whole bunch of it. Besides wintergreen, though, I'll also need oxalochloride, THF, and purity. I made the purity myself, but I had to buy the THF and the oxalochloride. If you're interested in checking out the videos where I made the wintergreen or the purity, there will be links in the description. As I mentioned before, all the wintergreen that I have is made using the procedure from my edible chem video. The stuff that it produces, though, isn't very pure. Because I just planned to taste it in that video, it didn't really matter, but to use it for synthesis, I'm gonna have to clean it up. The easiest way to do this is to distill it, and it only took something like 20 minutes. I stopped it when there was just a small amount of stuff left in the flask, which should be mostly impurities. I now have some nearly pure wintergreen, and I'm ready to get things going. I start by adding...
Alexa, how long left on timer?
You have 26 minutes left on your 45-minute timer.
It's gonna be an hour-long stream, okay?
Adding the reaction solvent, which is THF, followed by the wintergreen and purity. In theory, the pyridine should be colorless, but it's a little old, so it turned yellow. But this really isn't a problem. With everything added, I cover the top with a small flask, and I start the magnetic stirring. In the next step, the reaction will produce quite a bit of heat, so it's important to cool it. To do this, it's pretty easy, and I just quickly set up an ice bath. When it's nice and cold, I start to add the oxalochloride slowly and in small portions. The reaction that we're doing here is between one molecule of oxalochloride and two
I'm still here. I'm just watching this video by Nile Red. He's turning mint flavor into glowing liquid, which I think is pretty cool overall.
Product that we want, which is called MCPO, but it also produces...
You know what? I want some milk. Don't worry, I'm just over here. My star, my star. Okay, we got the milk.
hydrochloric acid. The acid doesn't exist for very long though, and it's quickly picked up by the purity, which is basic. They react together to form pyridine hydrochloride, which is all the white solid that's forming. The actual desired product, MCPO, is soluble.
This milk smells and tastes weird.
Anyway, the entire
But not weird enough to be undrinkable.
Takes about 15 minutes. When I'm done, I take away the ice bath and I stir it at room temperature for about an hour. Then I add some water and I continue stirring it for another 15 minutes. By adding the water, I'm decreasing the solubility of our product MCPO, but I'm increasing the solubility.
I think I know what that banging sound is. I think it's my neighbor playing the drums.
Here, but they're actually switching positions, so the white precipitate is now the MCPO. I separate it off by pulling it through my vacuum filter, but it's also possible to do a gravity filtration. To make sure that I get as much as possible out of the flask, I wash it with a little bit of water. The water is also used to wash the MCPO to get rid of any pyridine hydrochloride that might still be there. I leave the vacuum pump on for about 15 minutes to try to dry it up as much as possible, and then I transfer everything to a watch glass. The final yield is about 2.8 grams, which is a percent yield of 62%. This yield's actually kind of low, and according to the procedure I was following, it should have been closer to 80-something%. I think the reason for this is that the reaction is very sensitive to water, so things need to be as dry as possible. The first time I tried it, I didn't do any special drying steps for the THF, and it completely failed. The second and successful time that you saw, I just dried the THF over molecular sieves, which work, but aren't the best. I think if I put a lot more effort into drying all the reagents and the solvents,
Get onto it, dude.
Closer to 90%. Anyway, now to test it out and to see if it actually works. So into this vial, I add 100 milligrams of MCPO, followed by 5 milliliters of ethyl acetate. I mix it around a bit, and then I dump in a fluorescent dye and some sodium acetate. The last thing to add is the hydrogen peroxide, which initiates the reaction. The ethyl acetate and the peroxide don't mix together very well, so to get the reaction started, it needs to be shaken. The reaction that's going on here is between MCPO and peroxide, which leads to the formation of an excited state intermediate called 1,2-dioxetane dione. As a side product, though, it also reforms the methyl salicylate. This is in contrast with the TCPO, which reforms the environmentally mean 2,4,6-trichlorophenol. The 1,2-dioxetane dione then breaks down to CO2 gas, and at the same time, it transfers energy to the fluorescent dye. The dye becomes excited, and as it relaxes back to its ground state, it releases light. The color of light that's released by this reaction depends entirely on the dye that's used. Now I just want to do a quick test and compare it to TCPO. So I turn off the lights and give it a shake, and the difference is immediately clear. The glow of the TCPO was way brighter, and it completely overpowered the MCPO. This really didn't last for very long though, and within less than a minute, it was already starting to die. Then, by about the 3-minute mark, it was producing no detectable light. The MCPO, on the other hand, seemed to be a lot more stable. It just went up to a level of light and kind of just sat there. It stayed pretty steady for about an hour, and then over the course of another 3.5 hours, it slowly died. In theory, because I used equal molar amounts of each, they should have similar potential light outputs. The difference, though, seems to ultimately come down to reaction rates and how fast they're
Yeah, this milk
produced.
tastes weird.
If the rate's slow, like with MCPO, the light will trickle out at a lower intensity over a longer period of time. On the other hand, if it's fast like the TCPO, it'll all quickly be dumped out. What's interesting is that the speed of the reaction isn't just specific to the molecule itself, and it's highly dependent on the solvent. In ethyl acetate, the TCPO is completely consumed within minutes, but in phthalate-based solvents, it can last for hours. Unfortunately, I don't have any, but it would be interesting to see how the MCPO performs in something like diethyl phthalate. For the last test, just for fun, I decided to do it on a larger
I'm still here.
All of the ingredients, except for the peroxide, were added to a bottle and shaken thoroughly until everything more or less dissolved. Then I turned off the lights and added about half a ml of 30% hydrogen peroxide. I closed the bottle and shook it for about 15 seconds, and, well, nothing happened. Initially, I had no idea what was happening, and I thought that maybe my MCPO or my peroxide were somehow no good. So I put the bottle down and went to go check on everything to try to see what went wrong. I really couldn't figure it out, and I thought this run was just a failure for some reason. But when I came back, it was faintly glowing. I then shook it up a bit more, and it got a lot brighter. I'm not exactly sure why it was a lot slower to get started here, but I think it's just because the relative amount of peroxide and base catalyst that I used was a lot less. The camera didn't pick it up too well, but it was producing a decent amount of light. A couple minutes later, I opened the bottle and poured everything into a beaker. Then I got another beaker and just poured everything back and forth because I figured it would look cool. In my opinion, it did, but because it's a volatile solvent, it also produced a lot of fumes, which weren't exactly pleasant. Occasionally, though, I caught the
Scout, you can't be in here, you know. Let me get my shoes on, Scout. Then I'll come hang out with you. Sorry, my cat's calling. It's okay, Scout. I'm coming. Hi, babies. Sorry, I just had to feed the cats for a second. Alexa, how long left on timer?
You have 16 minutes left on your 45-minute timer.
Okay, 16 minutes, you guys. So it'll round to about 16 minutes. No, 56 minutes.
which was honestly kind of nice, despite being completely overpowered by the ethyl acetate. Anyway, I continued playing with it for a couple more minutes, and then I put it all back in the bottle. At this point, I figured I was about done with it, so I put it on my workbench and went to sleep. I debated staying up to see how long it would last for, but I figured it would be the same as the other smaller runs that I already did. It turned out that I ended up being wrong, but it was a good idea that I went to sleep, because this is what it looked like 24 hours later. It was definitely way less than the night before, but it was still enough to faintly light up a small dark room. I didn't get any footage of it, but 12 hours after this, it was still glowing a bit, but it was basically dead. Anyway, in conclusion, I think this combination of MCPO and ethyl acetate is pretty good.
Okay, ferrofluid.
Back in October, I became a bit obsessed with ferrofluid. To first be specially prepared as nanoparticles and then chemically coated with something to make them stable. So the question now is, how did I do it? And well, that's kind of the point of this video. I'm going to be showing you guys exactly what I did, and the first step was to make the magnetite. To do this, I needed a source of iron 3+ and iron 2+ ions. In my last video, I used ferric chloride that I made for the iron 3+, and ferrous sulfate that I bought for the iron 2+. However, this really wasn't the best way to do it. Preparing both of them myself requires a lot of time and effort, and neither of them end up being super pure. I found that it was way easier and cheaper to just use circuit board etchant. This stuff is really easy to get, and I picked up 4 liters of it from a local store for only about 50.
Parents home already? Nope, just the mail truck. Don't worry. Alexa, how long left on timer? Alexa, how long left on timer?
You have 14 minutes left on your 45-minute timer.
Okay, 14 minutes.
It's about 40% ferric chloride, aka iron 3 chloride, and I used it directly as my iron 3+ source. To get the iron 2+ though, I had to make it myself from the 3+ etchant, but it was quite easy. All I had to do was reduce these.
I always have to wash out my glass of milk when I'm done with it.
So into a beaker, I poured in some of the ferric chloride, and I also dumped in some steel wool. It started reacting almost immediately, and the iron 3 was being reduced to iron 2. In doing so, 2 iron 3 ions were turning into 3 iron 2 ions, which meant that the concentration was increasing. A lot of procedures that I saw online, though, didn't take this at all into account, and they assumed that the concentration was staying the same. However, in the end, I was going to have 1.5 times more iron 2 ions than the iron 3 that I started with, and this was very important to be aware of. This is because later on, when I make the magnetite, I'm going to have to mix the iron 2 solution that I made with more iron 3, and the ratio between the two is very important. Messing this up, especially by a huge factor like 1.5, would definitely lead to poor quality magnetite and ruin the whole preparation. This process was exothermic, meaning it released heat, and because of this, the solution slowly heated up. This extra heat was actually...
Oh my god. Scout, I already fed you. What is it this time, Scout? Scout, what is it? I think it's those kids calling for me that want to play right now. But I honestly don't want to play with them.
Good thing, though, because it caused the reaction to go a lot faster. Over the course of just several minutes, the dark red-orange color from the iron 3 slowly disappeared, and it started turning green from all the iron 2. The basic idea here was to keep adding wool until it pretty much stopped reacting, and then to just let it sit there for a bit. I came back about 10 minutes later, and now the green color was getting a lot more obvious. All I did was just stir it around, and then I let it sit for something like another 30 minutes. By now, it looked like the red-orange color was pretty much all gone, and it was probably getting close to being done. However, I wanted to be really sure that there was no iron 3 left, so I let it sit overnight. This was what I had in the morning, and it wasn't exactly beautiful. There was still a lot of steel wool left, but there was also this whitish-green solid that had formed, which I think was just iron 2 chloride. I'm guessing there just wasn't I mixed it around as thoroughly as I could, and then, like before, I just let it sit around for a bit.
Brownies smell good.
And I saw that I had this
Wish y'all were here.
And now the next step was to get rid of all this extra junk. I did this by just passing it all through a regular coffee filter, and I drained it directly into the bottle that I was going to store it in. When everything had filtered through, I washed the beaker, the steel bowl in the filter, and the filter itself with a bunch of distilled water. When I was done doing that, I took away the funnel, and I topped everything off with more distilled water until I got to the level that I pre-marked on the bottle. This gave me a total volume of about 300 milliliters, and it let me calculate the relative concentration of this new iron 2 solution. For those that are interested, I've included all of the calculations that I did here, along with some extra details. But anyway, after this, I dropped in some iron nails. This iron 2 solution is easily oxidized back to iron 3 just by oxygen in the air. However, when these nails are added, it can reduce things back to being iron 2. At this point, though, the iron 2 solution was ready, and I could now actually get things started.
Smells amazing.
Fighting for healthcare reform, fighting for the dignity. I've been fighting for children to have access to quality education. I see my campaign for the United States Senate as a logical next step to the work I've been doing all along.
In my last video, I used my hot plate to stir things, but I found that it wasn't nearly fast or strong enough, especially to do it on larger scales. So I went and bought a nice overhead mixer from Amazon, which was basically just a high-tech milkshake maker. Also from eBay, I picked up a cheap Teflon-covered stir rod. Okay, so now equipment-wise, I was all set up, but to actually make the magnetite, I just needed one other ingredient. This was concentrated ammonia solution, which is usually around 28%, and I picked up mine online. Now to get things started, I filled up this container with about 3 liters of distilled water, and I turned on some weak stirring. Then I added 60 mils of the iron 2 solution, followed by 75 mils of the iron 3, and I let it stir for another 10 minutes. During this time, I set up an addition funnel, and I filled it with about 100 grams of the concentrated ammonia. Also, you can see here that at this point, the RPM of the mixer was at 463. When the 10 minutes were up, I increased the stirring to about 1200, and I opened the addition funnel. Almost immediately, it formed a bunch of dark solid, but the mixer quickly scattered it, and it disappeared. As more was added, though, it started sticking around, and the whole thing eventually turned brown. This was because when the basic ammonia was added, the pH slowly increased. When it got to above around 4, it started reacting with the iron 3 ions to make brown and insoluble iron 3 hydroxide.
Alexa, how long left on timer?
You have 7 minutes and 20 seconds left on your 45-minute timer.
As more ammonia was added, the iron 3 ions were all eventually converted, and the pH continued to increase. When it got to around 9, it started converting the iron 2 ions to iron 2 hydroxide, but these didn't exist for very long. Almost immediately after forming, they combined with the iron 3 hydroxide to make black magnetite. Now, if all I wanted to do was make some generic magnetite, I wouldn't have needed this whole setup. I could have just directly mixed my iron 2 and iron 3, and even without stirring, dumped in the ammonia. The reason that I did it this way, though, was because I needed the magnetite to form as nanoparticles. This part of the process was surprisingly finicky, though, and I found that even just small changes in things like stir speed or how fast I added the base could really affect the final result. In general, I wanted to stir it as fast as I possibly could, because as the stir rate increases, particle size tends to decrease. However, the faster I stirred it, the more air got mixed into the reaction, which caused more iron 2 to get oxidized to iron 3. This altered the ratio of iron 3 to iron 2, and if this wasn't accounted for, the quality of the magnetite would be affected. For magnetite, the perfect ratio between iron 3 and iron 2
Smells amazing.
is 2 to 1. What I did instead, though, was use a lot more iron 2, and I added it as a ratio of 1.7 to 1. This way, when it oxidized and became iron 3, it would then be able to just combine.
The face when you remember the face on those reindeer sugar cookies, that was supposed to be a smile. And I was just like, ah! It was hilarious. I baked them at my mom's house. but I didn't live stream it.
Iron 2. This gave me a bit of a buffer zone and it allowed the reaction to be a lot more tolerant to oxygen. However, when the reaction was done, I also didn't want excess iron 2 still floating around. The speed that I added the base at also affected particle size, but this too was dependent on the stir rate. A faster addition could lead to smaller particles. However, if the stirring weren't fast enough, it could cause larger ones to form instead. So basically, if I stirred it too quickly, I might get too much oxidation, but if I stirred it too slowly, the particle size might become too big. On top of this, there were other variables, like how much extra water I had to include in this reaction, and things like temperature, and I had to find a balance between all these factors. It's definitely still far from perfect, but what I found was to do it at room temperature with about a 20 times dilution, a stir rate of about 1200 like I said before, and to add the base over the course of 20 minutes. Adding the base did cause the
I
mix
love
to
science,
thicken
honestly.
up, so over the course of this, I slowly increased the stir rate to around 1500. So 20 minutes later, I was done adding all the ammonia, and then I let it stir for another 15 minutes. While I was waiting though, I prepared the solution that I would use to stabilize the nanoparticles. This was done using oleic acid, which I got from eBay, as well as some more of the concentrated ammonia solution. So into a beaker, I added about 15 grams of oleic acid, followed by 20 mils of water and 10 mils of the ammonia. Almost immediately, the ammonia reacted with the oleic acid to form a soap called ammonium oleate. I stirred this around until it became a nice and thick goo, and it was basically ready. When it had almost just been 15 minutes, I went back to the reaction and I filled the addition funnel with 15 grams more of the concentrated ammonia. All of this ammonia was quickly added within about a minute. And when it was done, I checked the pH and I saw that it was nice and basic, probably just below 10. I then took away the funnel and I dumped in all of the soap that I had just made. It has a tendency to get stuck inside the beaker though, so to get it all out, I had to wash it a couple times with distilled water. I then let it stir over the next 20 minutes or so, and during this time, I slowly increased the RPM up to about 1900. What was happening here was an interaction between the ammonium oleate soap molecules and the magnetite nanoparticles. The charged polar ends of the ammonium oleate were being attracted to the surface of the magnetite. This caused them to absorb to the surface of them and to stick out their long hydrophobic tails. One of the biggest issues with magnetite nanoparticles is they tend to want to aggregate together and to stop being nanoparticles. With the ammonium oleate on their surface though, and with all these tails sticking out, the particles are stabilized because they're physically being blocked from coming together. On the surface, I started seeing a lot of brown stuff, which can be a bit scary because it might indicate some unwanted oxidation. I think it was mostly just soapy foam though that was filled with extremely small particles of magnetite. I of course could be wrong about that and it could be because of oxidation, but I just don't think that's the case. I originally took away the funnel because as this whole thing mixed, it slowly puffed up with foam and I didn't want it getting in the way. But now that it was almost done and it seemed to be relatively stable, I brought it back. This time though, instead of filling it with concentrated ammonia, I did it with dilute muriatic acid. This was made by just mixing 1 volume of the concentrated acid with 2 volumes of distilled water. Then once it had been about 20 minutes, I started adding the acid. Right now, this mixture was still very basic, with a lot of excess ammonia, and this was what the acid attacked first. This produced a bunch of ammonium chloride, and the pH slowly decreased. When most of the ammonia was eventually consumed, it then started attacking unreacted ammonium oleate soap, as well as the ammonium oleate that was on the surface of the magnetite. In both of these cases, it can...
Oh, someone's home. My stepmom's home. Alright, so, I think that's gonna be it for this stream. Thank you all for watching, and see ya.